Yo.
Okay, so welcome to part 8, I believe, of this series. And today we're just going to try and rig the arm. I'm not sure if we can get to the leg, but let's see. So let's begin. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on the right arm. So we'll begin with that one first. And we want to click on the group layer for the right arm. Okay, because what we want to do is change the Z depth of this arm. So we're going to begin at frame 1. And again, the reason why we're starting at frame 1 is because most of the body begins at that particular frame. Okay, so let me go back to the right arm layer, which is here. Okay, and I'm going to go to the Z depth, and I'm just going to change the value just to get that keyframe and change it back. Okay, then I'm going to go to the second frame, so that's one frame forward, right? And I'm going to change the Z depth to maybe something like a -3, just to bring it up. So we see that movement. If I scrub back, we see it moves forward. Okay, so the idea is, as you know, is to rotate it with the body. So with that done, the next thing we want to do is I'm going to go back to frame 1, click on the body bone, and we can see that when it gets to here, we can see the side of the head. So we want the arm to come to the side of the body as well, which is on frame 12. Okay, so I'm going to click on this the move control point here, and I'm going to go back to frame 1 first, and I'm going to move it slightly just to get that keyframe. Okay, and then move it back into position, and then go to frame 12, and then just move it over to the side like so. I think I'm going to move it here. Okay, and then I'm going to click back on. I'm going to click off of the click anywhere in this white space here, and click back on the body. Okay, just to see where the next keyframe should be, and that's on frame 24 when the body, when the head is at this angle here. So I'm going to click on this control point again on the arm and just move it over to where it's supposed to be at this frame. And we can use the left arm to line it up. Okay, so we're going to leave it there. Now, the next thing to think about is that, well, obviously we don't want the arm to stay like, behind the character like this. So we're going to have to, rotate it to give it that feel of it actually rotating with the body and not being left behind. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the first frame here, and what I'm going to do is add a rotate control point keyframe. So I'm going to click on the rotate point, and this rotate point actually controls the entire arm here. Okay, so let me undo that. So what I'm going to do is just click on it and then move it slightly to add the keyframe, and then move it back into position. Okay, and then I'm going to go to frame 24 and then rotate it where I want it to be. So I'm going to rotate it all the way around like so. You can even match it up with this left arm here. All right, so when you're doing something like this, please don't get confused with the arms. So now I'm going to turn off the left arm just so we don't get confused. So let me look for that left arm layer. So we have the right arm here, left arm. So let me close this one, turn it off. Okay, and click back on my body bone and just scrub through to see how that looks. Okay, so something to consider here is hand here. Okay, notice where his thumb is pointing up, and when we rotate around, it's as if his hand is turning backwards, right? So its thumb at this point is supposed to be facing forward. If you do your hand, I don't think you can do your hand like this. Okay, so we need to change the what you call it, the rotation of the hand here. So I'm gonna just select where I want to begin that change, and I think when it gets to maybe here, we can start that change. So to do that, I'm going to click on the scale control point. Okay, and I'm gonna just change the value here just so we can add a keyframe. And remember, again, each time you change a value while the animate button is on, it will automatically add a keyframe, right? And then you can change it back if you don't want that change to be made. So I hope that makes sense. So if I click back on my scale control point here, let me just change back this value, remove that minus sign, put it back into place there. And the next thing I want to do is also to add a rotate control point for the hand here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to just move it slightly and then move it back over to add that. And then I'm going to click back here. And then now, when it gets to the next frame, I want it to flip. So on this frame, I'm just going to add the minus sign here. Okay, and then all we need to do is just to rotate that around. And there we can see that the thumb is now facing in the correct direction. Okay, so we have that nice rotation going on there, and then it gets to here. Okay, all right, so the next thing is to work on it going in front of the body and then coming back around. Okay, so for that, let me click off of the body, click back on it just to see where the other keyframes are. Okay, so if I'm following the head, at the next frame, we should change the Z depth of the arm right here, so it can go in front of the body. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click on this control point. By the way, when you get to here, make sure that you're actually clicking on the correct bone, because remember the left arm is also here. Okay, but even though it's turned on, the bones can still is still visible. So if just move it and you will be able to see. So this right here is definitely the left arm and not the right arm. Okay, so let me undo that, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit just to make sure that I select the correct bone. What I should have done is I shouldn't have moved it directly over the other bone. Should have just moved it somewhere close. Okay, so I just moved it, and we can see that it's the correct bone. So let me undo that. Okay, so when you move it, don't move it directly over the arm that is there. Okay, so with that selected, I am going to, well, actually I don't need to do that yet. Let me click on the upper arm, the right arm layer. Okay, and just turn it on and off to make sure that it's this one, because remember, I'm changing the Z depth. So what I want to do is I'm just going to duplicate this frame, right? Because when it's here, it's supposed to still, I'm going to duplicate this keyframe. So it's supposed to be this keyframe, and then it switches back to the previous one. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and right click here and click on duplicate. And then I'm going to move one frame forward, and I'm going to click on this first keyframe here. I'm going to right click and duplicate. So it goes back in front. Okay. Now what I want to do is just to test out this rotation here. Let me undo that. And the reason why I'm testing out this rotation, I'm going to see if it's getting weird results like this. So notice it's in front of the body here, but it's not in front of the leg. Okay, and that's because of where that's because of the Z depth location. So let me undo that, and I think I'm going to go back to the right arm, and I'm going to change this Z depth position from 0 to maybe something big, like maybe like a 5. So it pushes more up above the body, above the legs actually. So let me rotate this, and we see that it's now in front of the legs. So we know that is okay. Okay, so let me undo that, and the next step is to rotate the arm back to this direction. So let me click on this bone here, and again, remember, just make sure that it is the correct bone if you did it exactly as I did. So let me move that, and no, it is not the correct bone. So let me undo that and click on that one, move that. Okay, let me zoom in some more, make sure that this is the right one. Let me see now, let me move that slightly to see. Okay, so it is the correct one. So yeah, so when it gets to, so right here, it's in that position, right? And I want to, when it reaches maybe frame 48, I believe that's where the entire body ends. Ends its rotation. I'm gonna just move it back over to this side. Although, as a matter of fact, what you can do is just duplicate the original frames, because the first frame we had it over here, correct? So what we need to do is, well, what we could do is just to right click and duplicate, and it goes back there, just like that. So that is pretty good. And let me click off of that, click on the body, just to make sure that the rest of the body ends at 48. And let me just scrub through my timeline to see. And yeah, it's working pretty, it's looking pretty okay to me. So the same issue with the hand here, when it gets to that other part, we want to make sure that the thumb is in front, right? So I'm gonna change it when it gets to maybe somewhere behind the leg here. I'm gonna have that change. So maybe when it gets to here, I'm going to click on the scale control point, and we already have the keyframe, so we can duplicate. So let me right click here, duplicate. Make sure you're at the frame where you want the duplication to go to. So I'm just gonna right click, duplicate, click on here, right click, duplicate. Oh, whoops, undo. Let me undo that. Go one frame forward and then duplicate these ones. Duplicate, right click, duplicate. Okay, so we see that the thumb is in front. So we know that that is good. And let me zoom out and just scroll back to see. And we have that rotation going on. Now, the issue with this rotation is that if you wanted to make a perfect rotation, the arm really shouldn't be coming down like this, right? It should stay within, and let me explain that. It should stay, if I should draw this line here, it should stay within this region here and go across, right? But to do that, we'd have to, do some tricks in order to make it stay above this line. Some scale and stuff like that, but then that could get complicated where Synfig is concerned. Okay, so to do this rotation, I've found that the best way is to just rotate the arm down like so and come around. So it will look like a seesaw where his arms are going down and then up again, but that is okay. So let me move this up. Okay, so we need to work on the next arm now, okay? And I might fast forward this area, or I might leave it as at normal speed, just in case you didn't catch the first piece, even though you can rewatch the video anyway. But let's see what I do. Okay, so I'm going to turn on back the left arm now. I'm going to turn, well, let me leave the right arm on for now. So with this arm, let me click on the bone. So what we want to do is rotate this arm while this other arm is rotating, right? So let me go to frame 1, type in frame one here, and I'm going to click on this and just move it slightly to add a keyframe, and then move it back. And then we know that the next movement takes place on frame 12, so I'm going to move this over like so. Just close enough, but not over that bone there. And we also know that the next movement is on frame 24. Okay, so on frame 24, we see that the arm is there. So we want to make sure that we click on this one and move this over to its position. Like so. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, I think I'm going to leave it maybe there. Okay. All right, and the next movement should be on frame 48, I think. Is that so? Frame 48, it comes back around. Okay, so let's work on the rotation for this one first, right? So we want to make sure that we have a rotate control point. So I'm going to go back to frame 1 and just move this slightly using my arrow keys, and then move it back, and then come to frame 12 and then rotate it similar to this arm here. So we'll be using this arm as a guide essentially. All right, don't worry about the Z depth position of it for now. We'll change that shortly. I'm gonna go to frame 24. I'm gonna move it over, and we can use our guides here to make sure that it comes up to where it is supposed to be, like so. And that is okay with me. All right, so let's go back to see how that is done, what that looks like. Okay, and it's looking okay. But yeah, so let's change the Z depth position of the hand here. So let's go back to the left arm layer, and I'm going to turn off animate here, and I'm just going to change the Z depth position here to maybe let's change it to 5 and see what that looks like. All right, and then let me turn on back animate, click on the body. I'm just going to rotate it to see where. Okay, so that is okay. So let me undo that. All right, and then let me test this again to see. Okay, and that is fine. And the thumb, keep your eye on the thumb and where it's located to make sure that you're doing the right thing. So when it comes around here, the thumb is to be pointing up. Okay, so let's make that change somewhere when his hand gets to maybe here. So let's, on this frame, let's activate the scale control point as well as the rotate control point. Let's add keyframes for those. So I'm just gonna move this rotate slightly, then move it back to add that keyframe, and then click on the scale control point. And we know that we just need to change the value here to add that keyframe, and then make sure that you find back that that control point. I think I'm on the wrong one, so let me click on the, let me zoom in a bit, click on the scale. Okay, and then change back that value. Okay, and then move 1 frame forward. And then we're going to make that switch here. So I'm going to just type the minus sign right here, press enter, and of course I'm going to duplicate the rotate control point to rotate it. Oh, I think that's the, let me undo that. Let me go back to the rotate control point here. Okay, and just move forward. All right, so even though if I copy it, I will still have to move it back into position, but let me just duplicate this and then rotate the arm around like so. All right, so then we have that coming on here like so, and that is fine with me. All right, so it took us a while, but we're getting there. And then let me, so at this point we want this arm to come forward now. So let's go to where, like here, and then if I move forward, we can see that this arm goes forward, right? So when this goes forward, right? We want the both of them to be in the same position, and then at the next frame we want to move this arm forward, okay? Because remember the default position, both of them were like this. And let me take this opportunity to just move this over a bit. So let me go back to this frame and just move this over a bit, because I was looking at the other arm and noticed that this was too far out. So yeah, that is okay. Well, we can move it in just a bit more. So let me move it in. All right. Okay, so let me just scrub back and see where that begins. Okay, so here it's there, and here it goes forward, and then the next frame it moves. So right at this frame, I want to go back to remember this is the left arm, okay? The character is now facing backwards, so keep that in mind. And I'm going to go to the left arm layer, even though the control point for the left arm is over here. Remember that we're dealing with this arm. So if I click on this, okay, so this control point is for the group layer. So don't make that mistake and think that it's the left arm. So always turn on and off your layers just to make sure, okay? So I'm on the left arm, and here I want to assign a Z depth. So let me just change this to 0 and then change it to 5. And then the next frame, I want to move this forward. So I think I'm going to give it a -3, okay, to move it forward. And then we know that the next movement is supposed to happen on frame 48, correcto? So I'm going to go to, well, I'm going to put it on frame 44 first before the arm gets here, because I don't want to have the same issue of selecting the wrong one. So I'm going to move this over first, and then I'm going to move it to frame 48 like so, okay? And now that I'm looking at it, we didn't have to do that. We could have just right click the first frame, because remember we already had that keyframe there, and then duplicate that frame there, okay? I mean, yeah, sometimes you'll forget that you can duplicate frames like that, okay? But that is okay. So we want both arms to stop at the same time. So when it gets to here, right, we want to have that Z depth for the left arm going on, left arm. So we want to have this, duplicate this one, and then move one frame forward, and then duplicate this one here, duplicate to push it back, okay? And save. Okay, so let us take a look at what that looks like. So let me turn on the preview and click on play. Okay, and that looks rather fine to me. It's not perfect, but hey, we're getting that rotation as we wanted, okay? Yeah, so that looks fine to me. Preview that again. Press play. Okay, so that's what we have, and this video is way too long, so I'm gonna stop it here, and I will see you in the next video.
Yo, MRD.